Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time we're looking at something that affects a lot of people, probably more than you realize. We're talking caregiving in Canada.
Hmm.
And you might be surprised to learn that 1 in 4
Wow.
Canadians over the age of 15 are actually caregivers.
Yeah, that's a huge.
That's a big chunk of the population. And for this deep dive, we're going to be focusing on a really important part of caregiving, but one that we often don't talk enough about: self-care.
It's true. You know what's fascinating to me is that caregivers in Canada, get this, they actually provide 3 times
Mm.
more care than the entire formal healthcare system.
Wow.
It's unbelievable. And it just highlights how much they do, often without much recognition.
Yeah, they're the unsung heroes for sure.
Yeah.
And the cool thing is the information we're looking at today, it's actually an online tool designed for older adults in Canada, but it's really applicable to anyone
Oh, absolutely.
involved in caregiving, no matter where you are or how old you are.
Yeah, I mean, the challenges and the rewards of caregiving are pretty universal.
For sure. So let's get right into it. How can caregivers, deal with the demands of their role and still, find fulfillment and joy in it without burning themselves out?
Right. Well, the first thing to remember is that caregiving can be incredibly rewarding. The research actually points to some pretty significant benefits. Things like increased confidence, a deeper connection with the person you're caring for, and even just, a sense of purpose.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, there's something very special about helping someone you love, It strengthens the bond between you like nothing else.
Absolutely. But at the same time, we got to be honest, caregiving, it's not always easy. It can be incredibly demanding.
Yeah, for sure.
And even when you find it rewarding, there's still challenges. And there was a survey done in 2023 by the Canadian Centre for Caregiving Excellence, and they spoke to over 3,000 caregivers. You know what they found?
What's that?
Nearly half of them, like 47%, said they felt constantly tired.
Wow, almost half.
Yeah, it's a lot. And then on top of that, you have another 37% who said they just felt completely overwhelmed by all their responsibilities.
Yeah.
And even more concerning, 25% said their mental health was only fair or poor. So you can really see.
That's significant.
Yeah, it's a big deal. And that tension between the rewards and the immense burden of caregiving. That's exactly why self-care is so important. It's like the key to making it all work.
Yeah, it's finding that balance, right?
Yeah.
Like you were saying, caregiving can be so enriching, but it can also be really draining if you don't look after yourself.
Exactly.
So in this online tool we're looking at, it talks about something called healthy lifestyle behaviors. And it's all about like building habits, good habits that help you kind of thrive as a caregiver.
Right, and it's almost like these behaviors are an antidote to the negative effects of stress that caregivers often face.
I like that.
And, they break it down into 4 key things: physical activity, healthy eating, stress management, and social engagement.
Right. So basically the things we all know we should be doing.
Right, exactly.
But it's hard to find the time or the energy to do it when you're already, so busy taking care of someone else.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, think about it. If you're one of those 5.2 million Canadians juggling a full-time job and over 30 hours of caregiving every week.
Oh, yeah, that's the sandwich generation, right?
Exactly. And
Yeah.
it's like, where do you even begin to find the time or the energy for yourself?
Yeah, that's a good question.
And that actually brings us to a really crucial question. Why is it so difficult for caregivers to take care of themselves? Why do they put themselves last?
Yeah, that's what I want to know. What's going on there?
So this tool points to a few factors, like things like ingrained personal habits, how you were raised and what you're used to. Also, things like cultural background and even family dynamics can play a huge role in making it hard to adopt those healthy lifestyle changes.
So it's really complicated. It's more than just knowing what you should be doing.
Oh, absolutely. It's way more than that.
It's like all these different pressures and expectations and beliefs that you have to kind of navigate.
Exactly. And what's interesting? They even mention in the tool that it's important to consult a doctor before making big lifestyle changes, especially if you're a caregiver with any pre-existing health conditions.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. They really emphasize that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to this, which I think is important to remember.
For sure. So it sounds like the main takeaway here is that, like, if you want to overcome these barriers to self-care, the first step is really understanding them.
You got it. You hit the nail on the head.
Okay, so we've talked about all the reasons why self-care can be so difficult for caregivers. But what can they actually do about it? Like, are there specific strategies they can use to kind of make it easier, make it more manageable? even though they're already so busy and stressed?
That's a great question. And the good news is this tool definitely offers solutions. It's not all doom and gloom. It actually emphasizes that you don't have to do this all alone. Like, support is so important. It's all about shared planning and having people to rely on.
I like that. Yeah, it takes the pressure off a bit, right?
Exactly. It's more of a team effort.
Yeah.
And they specifically talk about getting your family and friends involved in the planning. So, like, even simple things like brainstorming healthy meals together, or planning walks with a friend so you can get some exercise and fresh air at the same time. And this is great because not only does it help the caregiver practically, but it also creates this sense that everyone's kind of in it together, that everyone's responsible for each other's well-being.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's like building that support network. Yeah.
Exactly. So you're not just relying on your own willpower. You've got people to help you stay on track.
Absolutely. And what about like other types of support? Are there things beyond family and friends?
Oh, for sure. There are definitely things beyond that. And one thing they highlight is community health clinics,
Oh, yeah.
which are amazing. They offer so much practical and emotional support that a lot of caregivers don't even know about.
Yeah. It's easy to forget that those resources are out there when you're so caught up in everything else.
Exactly. It's like you get tunnel vision and you're just focused on getting through the day,
Right.
but just knowing that there's help available can make a huge difference.
Yeah, for sure.
And the other thing to remember is that asking for help is not a weakness. It actually takes a lot of strength and self-awareness to do that.
Yeah, I agree.
It means you're taking care of yourself so you can keep taking care of your loved one. It's not selfish at all.
It's essential.
Yeah.
This whole conversation about caregiver self-care, it's got me thinking about the bigger picture. We often focus so much on the person who needs care, which is obviously really important.
Right, of course.
But we kind of forget about the well-being of the person who's actually giving that care, the caregiver.
You're so right. I mean, caregivers are like the backbone of our healthcare system. They're doing this incredibly important work, often behind the scenes, and I think we're just starting to realize what a huge impact it has on them.
And, remember that statistic we talked about earlier? How caregivers actually provide 3 times more care than the entire formal healthcare system in Canada.
Oh, it's mind-blowing.
That's a lot. It's a massive contribution. And a lot of times it goes unrecognized and uncompensated.
That's true. And just think about the impact it would have on our healthcare system if suddenly all those caregivers couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah, it would be devastating.
It would be a disaster, and yet we kind of take it for granted.
We do. We really do.
And I think that's why this information tool we're looking at is so powerful. It's not just giving caregivers practical tips, it's also raising awareness about the crucial role they play in society.
It's like a call to action in a way, right?
Yeah.
It's telling us that we all have a responsibility to support caregivers.
Absolutely. Whether it's by offering help to someone we know who's a caregiver, or pushing for policies that help them, or even just acknowledging the challenges they face, we can all do something.
Yeah, for sure. So what does this all mean for our listeners? What's the key takeaway here?
Well, I think the most important thing to remember is that self-care isn't selfish. It's actually essential. And that goes for everyone, not just caregivers. We tend to think of it as a luxury, but it's really an investment in our health and well-being. And when we take care of ourselves, we can show up better for everyone else in our lives.
It's like you can't pour from an empty cup. You have to fill yourself up first.
Exactly. And for caregivers, that means focusing on those 4 pillars we talked about: the physical activity, the healthy eating, managing stress, and staying socially connected. Those aren't just abstract ideas, they're actual tools to help caregivers replenish their energy and build resilience.
It's about making those small changes that add up over time. Taking that walk, staying hydrated, reaching out for support. All those things can make a big difference.
Yeah, they really can. And remembering that you don't have to do it all alone. There are so many people out there who want to help, from family and friends to community clinics and online resources. There's a whole network of support out there just waiting to be tapped into.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of resources, the online tool we've been talking about is a great place to start. It's called the Caregiver Self-Care Information Tool, and it's from the National Initiative for the Care of the Elderly in Canada.
Yeah, and it's full of amazing information, and it's all available online for free. We'll be sure to include a link to their website in the show notes.
Perfect. So if you're a caregiver, I highly recommend checking that out. It could be a real game changer for you.
And even if you're not a caregiver right now, these insights are still valuable. I mean, self-care is important for everyone, no matter what our roles are.
Totally. It's a foundation for everything else we do in life. It makes us better partners, better friends, better colleagues, and yes, better caregivers.
Yeah, it's an ongoing process, right? It's a journey, not a destination.
That's a good way to put it. It's about making those conscious choices every day to prioritize our well-being, even when it's tough.
Yeah, and the more we focus on taking care of ourselves, the more positive impact we can have on everyone around us.
Oh, that's inspiring. I like that.
Sure. It is, isn't it? It kind of brings us back to the question we were talking about before. How can we as a society better support caregivers?
Yeah, it's a question worth asking. And it's a conversation worth having. I mean, caregivers are really the backbone of our communities. They hold families together, they take care of our most vulnerable, and they make our society work.
And the more we support them, the stronger and more resilient we all become.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into caregiver self-care,
Hmm.
I gotta say, I'm just so impressed by the dedication and resilience of caregivers.
Hmm.
And they really do play such an important role in our society.
I couldn't agree more. It's been a really eye-opening conversation, and I hope everyone listening has a better sense of, both the challenges and the rewards that come with caregiving. And
Got
especially, the importance of taking care of themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And, one of the things that really stuck with me is how often we think of self-care as like a luxury, when really for caregivers especially, it's absolutely essential.
It is.
It's not about, you know, bubble baths and spa days, although those are great. It's about making those small choices every day to prioritize your own well-being, physically, mentally, emotionally.
Yeah, it's about building those healthy habits into your routine, even when things are crazy. And for caregivers, that might mean setting boundaries, asking for help, taking breaks, even if it's just for 15 minutes to go outside and get some fresh air.
Right. And just realizing that you don't have to do this all by yourself. Like support is so important.
Oh, absolutely. And that support can come from so many places, family, friends, community health clinics, online resources, support groups. There's a whole network out there.
Yeah, for sure. So if you're a caregiver listening to this, you're not alone. There are so many resources out there to help you and to help you find those moments of peace, even when things are tough.
And if you're not a caregiver yourself, you know, we can all do our part to support the caregivers in our lives, whether it's, helping out with practical things or speaking up for policies that support caregivers or even just acknowledging the challenges they face.
Oh.
Every little bit helps.
Absolutely. Caregivers are the ones who hold everything together. They take care of our families, our communities, and we really need to make sure they know that they're seen and appreciated and supported.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And on that note, I think we'll leave you with this. What's one small act of self-care that you can commit to today? Maybe it's just taking a few deep breaths or going for a walk or calling a friend.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be anything big. Even small things can make a difference. And when you take care of yourself, you're also taking care of the people around you.
Too true. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll see you next time.